Mara Ellison did not beg when they pulled her past the courthouse steps. She did not spit. She did not curse. She did not give Rusk Bell the satisfaction of hearing her voice break. She only lifted her chin, tasted blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her lip, and looked at every face along Bitterroot Crossing's boardwalk. Every rancher who had borrowed her father's tools, every widow who had taken flour from her mother's kitchen, every man who had called Jonas Ellison honest when Jonas was alive. Not one of them stepped down, not one. That was when Mara understood what ruled the town. Not Victor Dane, not Sheriff Orrin Pike, not the courthouse with its painted columns and crooked seal. The silence. The silence was the thing that owned them all. The trouble had started at 10 that morning, under a hard white sky that made every lie in town look official. Mara had ridden in from the Ellison place with her father's tin document box tied behind the saddle. Inside were canceled notes, tax receipts, and the small leather ledger Jonas Ellison had kept for 22 years. Her father had believed in fences, water rights, and arithmetic. He said a man could lie with a smile. He could lie with a badge. He could lie with a clerk's stamp. But numbers left footprints. Jonas Ellison had been dead for 5 weeks. The doctor called it a stroke. The sheriff called it God's will. Victor Dane sent flowers to the funeral and posted a foreclosure notice 3 days later. Mara had read that notice so many times the words had started to feel personal. County improvement lien, failure to satisfy assessment, property subject to tax sale. It was all wrong. Her father had paid the assessment in full the previous spring, then paid a second fee in autumn when the county claimed the first record had been misplaced. Jonas had grumbled, paid anyway, and written both payments into his ledger in pencil so sharp the figures looked carved. So Mara rode into town to lay the proof on the land clerk's desk. But the land office door was locked. Harvey Pruce, the clerk who had kept that office open through snow, fever, and his own wife's burial, was gone. And nailed to the frame with a blacksmith spike was a fresh notice. Tax sale advanced. Public auction set for Thursday. Signed by Sheriff Orrin Pike. Countersigned by Victor Dane's attorney. Dated 2 days before Jonas Ellison was buried. Mara stood in front of that door until the street sounds thinned around her. Then she turned toward the sheriff's office. She made it 6 steps. Rusk Bell came out of the alley beside the dry goods store. Rusk was not a famous gunman. Famous gunmen cared too much about being seen. Rusk Bell was worse than that. He was patient, broad-shouldered, and useful to rich men who needed cruelty done with a clean shirt on. "Miss Ellison," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Mr. Dane wants a conversation." "I want Sheriff Pike." "The sheriff is occupied." "Then he can become unoccupied." Rusk smiled. It was a slow smile, the kind that moved only the mouth. 2 men stepped behind her. Mara felt them before she saw them. One reached for the tin document box. The other closed a hand around her upper arm, hard. Mara twisted once, just enough to make Rusk's smile vanish. Then the man yanked the box from the saddle strap. "That box is private property," she said. "County matter now." "It contains proof." "That's so." Rusk nodded. The grip on her arm tightened. They walked her into the street, not led her, not escorted her. dragged her. Bitterroot Crossing was full enough to witness and empty enough to pretend it had not. A teamster stopped with both hands on a feed sack. Two ranch wives stood outside the mercantile with their mouths shut. Old Amos Reedy, who had eaten Christmas dinner at the Ellison table 3 years running, looked at the dirt beside his boots. Mara quit pulling against them, not because she was beaten, because she was counting faces. She looked at each person long enough to make memory of them, the ones who looked away, the ones who did not, the ones who almost moved and then swallowed themselves back into safety. She would remember the almosts, too. They were halfway to Victor Dane's brick office when a horse stopped at the north edge of the street. The rider was dust gray from the road, dark coat, plain hat, no badge. He looked older than 30 and younger than old, with the stillness of a man who had learned that motion was expensive and trouble could be measured before it began. He looked at Rusk. He looked at Mara. Then he said, "Take your hand off her." His voice was not loud. That was why everybody heard it. Rusk turned slowly. "Private county business." "No," the stranger said. "That is a woman being handled by 3 men who do not want a 4th involved." Rusk's hand drifted toward his coat. "Ride on." The stranger dismounted. That was all. He stepped down into the dust, let the reins fall, and stood with his right hand loose beside a holster that looked older than the town. Mara had seen men show off courage before. This was not that. This was calculation already finished. "Take your hand off her," he said again, "or learn what your employer forgot to price." A murmur moved along the boardwalk. 2 men near the livery straightened. One quietly put his hands where everyone could see them. Rusk noticed. He noticed the stranger's stance. He noticed the distance. He noticed every window full of witnesses he had meant to frighten and now might have to explain. His jaw moved once. "Mr. Dane will hear about this." "I expect he hears about most things." Rusk nodded to the man holding Mara. The hand released. Mara did not rub the bruise. She would not give them that either. "My box," she said. Rusk held it under one arm. "Evidence in a county tax matter. That evidence proves the tax was paid." "Then you'll have a peaceful time proving it." He gave the stranger one last look and walked away with the box. His men followed. The street breathed again, but quietly, ashamed of the sound. Mara stood in the dust with one sleeve pulled crooked and her father's proof disappearing toward Victor Dane's building. The stranger watched Rusk go. Then he turned to her. "You hurt?" "They took the wrong box," Mara said. For the first time, his expression changed, only a little. "Meaning?" "My father trusted banks less than he trusted rattlesnakes. He kept copies." "Good." "You say that like you were hoping he did." The stranger studied her more carefully now. "You're Jonas Ellison's daughter." Mara went still. "You knew my father?" "Knew of him." "That is not an answer." "It is the honest part of one." She held his gaze. "Name?" "Elias Rook." "You are not from Bitterroot Crossing." "No." "But you know Victor Dane." A pause. "Everybody who loses land in this territory knows Victor Dane eventually." That answer told her enough and not enough. Mara stepped toward her horse. I'm going home. Dane's men will think of the copies soon. They thought of them the moment Rusk heard me say proof. I know. You have help there? 2 hands, 1 cook, and a 12-year-old barn boy who can throw rocks with sinful accuracy. That may not be enough. It is what I have. She swung into the saddle without accepting his hand. At the north road, she looked back. Mr. Rook? He lifted his eyes. If your honest answer has more pieces, the Ellison place is 4 miles up the Mill Creek Road. You can bring the rest before dark. She rode out. Behind her, Elias Rook looked toward the brick building with iron shutters at the far end of town. 1 shutter moved, barely. Then it went still. Victor Dane had not come to the window. Men like Dane did not need to show themselves to make a town feel watched. Elias knew that kind of man. He had known one in Cheyenne, another in Laramie, and Victor Dane in 3 counties under 3 different company names. He had not come to Bitterroot Crossing looking for Dane. That was what he had told himself. He had been riding toward Fort Benton for survey work, honest work, quiet work, lines on paper that did not become weapons in another man's hand. Then, 2 nights earlier, in a stage stop full of smoke and bad whiskey, he heard a freighter mention Dane's name, a tax sale, and the Ellison water cut. Elias changed his route before dawn. He told himself it was curiosity. He had lied to himself before. At the Ellison place, Mara had already emptied her father's desk when Elias rode into the yard. The house sat low against the basin, built from timber darkened by weather and work. A windmill turned behind the barn, with 1 blade bent from last winter's storm. Beyond it, the Mill Creek ditch ran silver through hayground that Dane wanted badly enough to put a dead man in debt. Mara heard Elias announce himself before she reached for the rifle. "Rook," he called from the porch. "Alone." "Come in." He entered and stopped just inside the office. Papers covered the floor, not scattered, sorted. Mara knelt beside an open compartment beneath the bottom drawer, lifting out folded receipts, survey slips, and letters tied in twine. Elias looked once at the desk, once at the window, then stepped aside to keep the door in view. "Nobody followed me," he said. "Yet." "Yet," he agreed. She held up 2 receipts. Spring assessment, autumn duplicate, same county seal, same collector signature, different receipt numbers, both paid before the lien notice. Elias crossed the room and looked without touching. "Dane's attorney will say one is a clerical error." "He can say it to a judge who does not owe him money." "You have one?" "Not here." "Nearest clean bench is Helena, if Judge Mercer is sitting." Mara looked up. "How do you know which judges are clean?" Elias did not answer right away. The silence this time was not town silence. It was a man deciding how much truth he could put down without putting a match to the room. "I used to work surveys for the Northern Basin Syndicate," he said. Mara set the receipts carefully on the desk. "Dane's Syndicate. One of his names for it. And I mapped land for them before I knew what the maps were for." Her face did not soften. Good, he thought. Softness was often just politeness standing too close to danger. What were they for? She asked. Finding the people who could be broken cheapest. By sundown, Mara's 2 ranch hands were sitting at the kitchen table with a stranger, 3 copies of paid county receipts, and a widening understanding that Jonas Ellison had not died in the middle of ordinary trouble. Hob Tate was 60, narrow as a fence rail, with eyes that missed nothing and knees that missed every warm season they had ever known. Nate Calder was 24, broad-faced, angry, and loyal in the way young men sometimes are, before the world teaches them how expensive loyalty can become. Mrs. Wren, who cooked, cleaned, mended, and ran the household with the moral authority of a judge, stood by the stove with both sleeves rolled. The barn boy, Tolly, was asleep under the table with one hand on a sling of stones. Mara drew the map herself. Mill Creek, the Ellison Ditch, the old freight road, the new railroad grade proposed through the North Basin. Elias watched her pencil move. She did not draw like a woman guessing. She drew like a woman who had ridden every contour since childhood and knew where water obeyed gravity and where men tried to make money pretending it did not. Dane does not want the whole ranch, Elias said. Mara stopped. He wants the head gate. Yes, Elias said, and the strip east of it. Hob leaned closer. For what? Freight control, Elias said. The railroad grade will miss Bitterroot Crossing unless a spur can be justified. Dane has been buying land in a broken line from the ore road to the cattle yards. The Ellison place is the missing hinge. Own the head gate in the right strip. He controls water, freight, grazing access, and the rail approach. Mara looked down at the map. The line was suddenly obvious. That was the cruelest part. Once the truth was visible, it looked like it had always been there. My father saw this, she said. Yes. And then he died. No one answered. They did not need to. Mara took a blank page and wrote one word at the top. Proof. Then she looked at Elias. If you mapped this kind of theft before, you know what proof holds. He sat opposite her. Receipts hold debt fraud. Maps hold intent. Clerk testimony holds procedure. Bank records hold pressure. A timeline ties them together. Then we make the timeline. They wrote until the lamp burned low. Elias gave names from old files, land companies that had dissolved after taking 2 ranches, judges who retired rich, sheriffs who suddenly bought better horses, widows whose tax notices arrived after the appeal window had closed. Mara wrote everything. Hob checked the dates against old county calendars. Mrs. Wren remembered which week Jonas had ridden to town, furious enough to forget his lunch. Nate remembered seeing Harvey Pruce leaving the land office with a carpet bag the night before the office closed. That name stopped Elias. Pruce left town? Disappeared, Mara said. Nobody has seen him since the foreclosure notice. Did your father know where he went? Mara's hand paused over the page. I don't know. The room went quiet enough to hear Tolly breathing under the table. Then Mrs. Wren said, He left something in the Bible. Mara looked at her. Your father, Mrs. Wren said. 3 days before he died, he put a folded paper in the big Bible and told me if you started looking in the desk, I should tell you to look there next. I meant to say sooner, but—" Her voice tightened. Mara did not blame her. Grief makes even useful things hard to reach. She crossed to the shelf. Inside the family Bible, behind a page listing births and deaths, was an envelope with her name written in Jonas Ellison's square hand. Mara opened it. The paper inside was not a letter. It was a witness statement, dated 9 days before Jonas died, signed by Jonas Ellison, witnessed by Mrs. Wren and Hob Tate. It described a private meeting in the land office with Harvey Pruce, where Pruce had shown Jonas a sealed preliminary acquisition map filed by Dane's attorney, a map that marked every property on the freight spur line. 7 marked acquired, 1 marked pending, Ellison Basin. Beside it, in a clerk's notation, were 3 words: tax sale preferred. Below Jonas's statement was a final line. Harvey ran west to St. Anselm Mission. Ask for Brother Colm. Tell him I kept the blue receipt. Mara read the line twice, then a 3rd time. Her father had known. He had not had enough time. Elias saw the change in her before anyone else did. The grief did not leave her face. It hardened into use. She folded the statement and set it beside the receipts. We need Harvey Pruce. And the map, Elias said. We need a printer first. Hob looked up. A printer? Mara nodded. If Dane gets the ranch before the evidence leaves this house, he burns the papers and calls the ashes legal. If the evidence is printed first, he has to burn the whole town to hide it. Mrs. Wren crossed herself once, not from fear, from recognition. There is Leona Vale, she said. Elias glanced at her. The woman who runs the Clarion? Her husband founded it. She runs it better. Mara nodded. My father trusted her. Can she print against Dane? She has printed against him before. And survived? Only because Dane thought no one read small type. That was the first useful advantage they had. Victor Dane feared banks, judges, titles, and men with guns. He did not yet fear a widow with a press and a county that was tired of pretending not to read. At first light, Mara rode into town with Elias and Hob. Not on the main road. They took the wash behind the cemetery, crossed the shallow bend where willow roots held the bank, and came in through the alley behind the Clarion office. Leona Vale opened the back door with a shotgun. She was 50, maybe more, with ink on her sleeve, silver in her hair, and the steady annoyance of a woman who had been interrupted in the middle of important work by people bringing more important work. Mara Ellison, she said. You look like your father when he wanted a favor that was really a fight. It is both. Leona looked past her at Elias. Who is he? A witness. Those are dangerous. Useful, too, Elias said. Leona did not smile, but one corner of her mouth considered it. Inside, the press room smelled of oil, ink, damp paper, and stubbornness. Mara laid out the receipts, the tax notices, her father's statement, and the timeline. Leona read without comment. That was how Mara knew she understood. People who failed to understand big trouble asked questions too soon. When Leona finished, she removed her spectacles and looked toward the locked front door. Dane advanced the auction to tomorrow morning. Mara's stomach tightened. How do you know? Because Sheriff Pike's deputy came by at dawn to post the notice. He looked like a boy carrying a snake. Deputy Wren? Leona nodded. He is not built for Pike's kind of law. No, Mara said quietly. He is not. Elias leaned over the table. Can you print by morning? Leona looked offended. I can print by midnight if nobody shoots the press. That is not unlikely, Hobbs said. It never is. Leona picked up Jonas's statement again. This points to Harvey Pruce. St. Anselm Mission, Mara said. 32 miles west. Leona's eyes sharpened. Then somebody rides now. Without Harvey, this is fraud. With Harvey and the acquisition map, this becomes conspiracy. I'll go, Elias said. Mara turned to him. Dane's men saw you. Dane's local men saw me. St. Anselm is not local. They may watch the West Road. I won't use it. You know another road? I know every road I should not have taken when I came here. That was not reassuring. It was, however, useful. Mara handed him the blue autumn receipt. He stared at it. The note said to tell Harvey my father kept the blue receipt. He may need to see it. This is original. Yes. Then you should keep it. I am keeping the spring receipt, the duplicate, and my father's statement. You take the one thing Harvey will trust. Elias held the paper carefully. For a moment she saw what he had been before all this. A surveyor. A man trained not to fold the wrong corner or blur the wrong line. I will bring it back, he said. Bring him back. He put the receipt inside his coat and left through the rear alley. Mara watched him mount. Then she turned back to Leona. What do you need? Leona pulled a chair to the table. Your opening paragraph. Mara blinked once. You are the printer. And you are Jonas Ellison's daughter. Your father spent 22 years making sure no one could steal the truth from his books. The first line should come from the person who knows how the books were kept. Mara sat. The blank page waited. She thought of her father tapping a pencil against her childhood sums. Again, Mara, read it again. A wrong number never improves because you pity it. She dipped the pen. She wrote, Jonas Ellison paid the tax twice. Then she kept going. By noon, Dane had made his next move. A writ of possession was signed by a visiting judge no one in Bitterroot Crossing had seen before. Sheriff Pike rode to the Ellison place with 6 men and legal authority polished bright enough to hide the dirt under it. But the house was empty. Hobb had cleared the ledgers. Mrs. Wren had moved the family Bible. Nate had taken the rifles, the cash box, and the old deed packet. Tolly, pleased to be trusted with something sacred, had carried the coffee tin full of spare keys. Sheriff Pike nailed the writ to the door of a house that had already removed its heart. At 2 in the afternoon, Deputy Aaron Wren found Mara outside the Clarion. He held his hat in both hands. He always did when he was about to say something that might make him brave. Miss Ellison, he said. She waited. The sheriff plans to search the place tonight. Dane says stolen county documents may be hidden there. They are not stolen. I know. That mattered. The words were small. They were also not silence. Wren swallowed. I can misplace the search order until evening. Not forever. How long? 2 hours? Maybe 3? Thank you. He nodded, then turned away. Deputy, Mara said. He stopped. My father used to say a badge makes a coward dangerous and a decent man accountable. I never knew which one you wanted to be. Wren looked at the dirt, then at her. I'm finding out. He left before either of them could say more. By dusk, the Clarion's first proof sheet came off the press. Mara read it line by line. Dane's lien, the double payment, the false advancement of the auction, the missing clerk, the preliminary freight spur, the acquisition pattern across the basin. Every claim pointed to a document. Every document had a witness. Leona had cut nothing that mattered and softened nothing that deserved to cut. Again, Mara said. Leona handed her the second proof. Mara found one error, a date transposed by 1 digit. 1 digit would be enough for Dane's attorney to call the whole thing careless. She circled it. Leona corrected the type without a word. At midnight, Elias returned. He did not come alone. Harvey Pruce rode behind him, shoulders hunched against more than cold, with a flat leather map case tied across his saddle. Mara met them in the alley. Harvey looked smaller than she remembered. 6 weeks of hiding had narrowed him, but his hands were steady when he untied the case. Mara, he said. Harvey? I should have come sooner. Yes, she said. He flinched. Then she added, But you brought the map. He shut his eyes once. I brought the map. Inside the Clarion, he laid it across the press table. The map was official survey linen, blue-lined and stamped under seal. The freight spur was drawn in a smooth, dark line from the ore road to the cattle yard. At each property, a notation. Purchased, lien pending, sheriff friendly, bank pressure applied, widow compliant, assessment dispute. And at Ellison Basin, tax sale preferred, owner obstacle, removal likely. The date beside it was 4 days before Jonas Ellison's death. Mara did not speak. No one asked her to. Some truths are too large to enter a room all at once. They come in stages. First the eyes, then the breath, then the body understanding what the mind has already read. Owner obstacle, removal likely. Her father had not been unlucky. He had been listed. Leona put both palms on the table and leaned over the notation. This goes on the front. Harvey shook his head. Dane will say it was preliminary language. Let him say it in front of a territorial prosecutor, Mara said. Her voice was very quiet. That made it worse. Elias watched her. Not with pity. Mara would have hated pity. He watched her the way a man watches a fuse burn down and hopes it reaches the right charge. Leona reset the front page. They printed through the night. 58 copies by 7 in the morning. Leona kept 3, Harvey kept 1. Mara stacked the rest in a canvas satchel and wrapped the top with oilcloth. At 7:30, Hobb, Nate, Mrs. Wren, and even Tolly came into town by different roads. Mrs. Wren took 15 copies as if they were church bulletins and promised to stand beside the bakery where no man in town would dare shove her. Hobb took the auction house door. Nate took the livery corner. Tolly, under strict instruction not to throw anything unless chased, took the alley between the feed store and the saloon. Mara looked at them all. Do not force a paper into anyone's hand. Offer it. If they refuse, let them refuse in daylight. Hob nodded. And Rusk Bell? If Rusk takes one, hand him another. Nate laughed once to spite himself. It helped. Not much. Enough. At 8:40, Mara walked down the same street where she had been dragged 2 days before. This time, she carried the satchel. Elias walked on her left. Harvey Pruce walked on her right with the map case under one arm. The town watched. Again. But this time, the watching had changed. Faces did not slide away as quickly. The teamster took a paper from Nate. The mercantile wives took one from Mrs. Wren. Old Amos Reedy stepped down from the boardwalk and removed his hat when Mara passed. He said nothing. That was not forgiveness, but it was no longer nothing. At the auction house, Rusk Bell stood in the doorway. He saw Mara, he saw Elias, then he saw Harvey Pruce. That was the first moment fear touched his face. Not fear of violence, fear of a missing piece walking back into the game. County auction, Rusk said. Registered bidders only. Mara reached into the satchel and held out a folded clarion. Public proceeding. Territorial statute requires open attendance. You can read the paragraph if the county records have not been misplaced. Rusk did not take the paper. Behind her, Hob was already giving copies to ranchers entering the hall. Paper rustled. 1 sheet, then 6, then 20. Rusk looked past her and realized his body could block a doorway. Not a fact. He stepped aside. At 9 o'clock, the auctioneer called the tax sale to order. At 9:02, Carl Duval stood up. Carl owned 40 acres east of the basin and had received 3 water notices from Dane's attorney that spring. He held the clarion in one hand. I have a question about the debt. The auctioneer blinked. Questions may be entered after... No, Carl said, before. Because if the debt is false, there is no sale. The room shifted. Not loudly. Better than loudly. Sheriff Pike stood near the wall. His badge caught a strip of morning light. Carl turned toward him. Sheriff, did your office verify that Jonas Ellison had failed to pay the improvement assessment? Pike's mouth tightened. The county filing indicated non-payment. That was not my question. Mara watched the sheriff. Men like Pike counted on words becoming fog. Carl had made the fog a fence. Pike looked toward the door. Rusk was there. So were 50 people holding printed evidence. I signed the notice based on the filing, Pike said. Harvey Pruce rose slowly. I was land clerk when the original payments were entered. The assessment was paid. Twice. The later non-payment filing did not pass through my office. The room turned. Harvey opened the leather case. I also have the original sealed acquisition map filed by Victor Dane's attorney. It shows the Ellison Basin marked for tax sale before the auction was announced, before the writ, and before Jonas Ellison was dead. The word dead moved through the room without being spoken by anyone else. Sheriff Pike stared at Harvey, then at Mara. Mara crossed the space between them. Sheriff, she said, quiet enough that only he in the first row heard. "You signed a notice on a debt that was already paid. You served a writ on a house whose owner had been marked an obstacle before he died. You can keep standing there while Dane's paperwork uses your badge, or you can make a record today that says when the proof became public, the law finally noticed." Pike's face darkened. "You threatening me?" "No," Mara said. "I am giving you the last clean minute you may ever get." For a moment, Bitterroot Crossing became as silent as it had been when they dragged her through the street. But this silence was different. This one was waiting. Pike looked at the clarion in Carl Duval's hand, at Harvey's map, at the auctioneer's paper, at Rusk Bell, who had suddenly gone very still. Then the sheriff looked at his own badge. Maybe he saw authority. Maybe he saw liability. Maybe, for the first time in years, he saw weight. He walked to the front. "This sale is suspended pending territorial review." The auctioneer opened his mouth. Pike cut him off. "No bids, no transfer, no possession action until the underlying assessment and filing trail are examined." Rusk stepped forward. "Sheriff." Pike turned. "Not today, Rusk." Rusk looked at the room. He knew how to hurt one man. He knew how to scare one woman. He knew how to make witnesses lower their eyes. He did not know how to fight 50 people reading. So he left. His men followed. The door swung shut behind them. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Carl Duval folded his newspaper slowly and said, "I reckon Helena ought to see this." Leona Vale was already standing by the back wall with a satchel of sealed packets. "They will." By noon, 2 riders had left Bitterroot Crossing. One carried copies to the territorial governor's office. One carried certified statements to Judge Mercer in Helena. By 3, Victor Dane's brick office was locked from the inside. By evening, it was empty. The iron shutters stood open, and Rusk Bell's horse was gone. Dane ran. But paper travels better than men who need to hide their names. Leona's second run printed 300 copies. They went by wagon, stagecoach, saddlebag, and every hand in town that had learned the difference between fear and shame. The Ellison writ took weeks to untangle. The bank accounts took longer. The county filing books had to be seized. Sheriff Pike resigned before Helena could remove him, which was not redemption, but at least it saved ink. Deputy Aaron Wren took temporary charge of the office and discovered that a badge was heavier when worn upright. Harvey Pruce testified in Helena with the blue receipt beside him and the map under territorial seal. Elias Rook gave 4 years of syndicate records and did not run when Dane's attorneys tried to name him complicit. There were more cases after that, more ranches, more widows, more tax liens that had been called mistakes because calling them theft would have required courage. Bitterroot Crossing did not become honest overnight. No town does. But after the auction, it became harder to be silent and still pretend silence was neutral. Mara went back to the Ellison place near sundown. The writ was still nailed to the door. She pulled it free, folded it once, and put it in the same tin box Rusk Bell had failed to steal, because even a lie becomes useful when it proves who told it. In her father's office, the desk compartment sat empty. The ledgers were stacked on the table. The receipts were copied and filed. The family Bible was back on the shelf, with Jonas Ellison's statement no longer hidden inside it. Mara stood there for a long time. Then she went out to the porch. Elias sat on the step, looking toward the north pasture, where two broken fence posts leaned into the wind. "You still heading to Fort Benton?" she asked. "That was the plan." "Was." He looked at her. She nodded toward the pasture. "Those posts have needed replacing since April. The head gate has to be reset before the first freeze. The county records will need a clean surveyor to rebuild half the filings Dane poisoned. And I have 22 years of ledgers that require someone who respects numbers enough not to flatter them." "That sounds like more than one job." "It is a ranch," Mara said. "One job would be suspicious." Elias almost smiled, almost. Then he looked back at the pasture. "I can start with the fence posts." "I thought you might." They sat there as the light lowered over the basin her father had built, one ditch, one receipt, one season at a time. Bitterroot Crossing would tell the story later as if it had happened at the auction. That was easier. A room full of people, a sheriff changing sides, a corrupt man running before dusk. But Mara knew better. It began in the street, when everyone saw wrong being done, and most of them chose the safety of silence. And it began again 2 mornings later, when 50 copies of the truth entered that same silence and gave it nowhere left to hide. Her father had taught her that numbers left footprints. He was right. So did fear. So did courage. And in Bitterroot Crossing, the first real victory was not that Victor Dane ran. It was that when the truth finally stood in the open street, the town did not look away.